The big thing in becoming a member, what you're doing is you're supporting the organization and our initiatives. The work that we do benefits people, whether they're members or not. But obviously, we like them to be members because, one, it gives us strength in numbers when dealing with the different municipalities, the different organizations. It shows that we are a large and organized group. Benefits that you have, it gives you access to events that we're involved in, such as our newbie run series. They are free to our members. It allows you to come out to events such as Camp and L. Get into that one in a moment. And it's a good source for people for learning, finding out what's happening with the trails, keeping everyone updated.
Welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast. I'm your host, Wes.
And I'm your host, Trisha. And today we have our guests, Brad, Chris, and Peter from the Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive. This all over again. Sorry, again.
It is a mouthful. It is a mouthful.
Oh my God.
At least we can edit this, maybe.
Let's say recreational. Okay, start again. Sorry. Thank you.
Do you want me to start too? Yeah.
Sure.
I'll take it from the top.
Okay.
Welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast. I'm your host, Wes.
And I'm your host, Trisha. And today our guests are Brad, Chris, and Peter from the Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive Recreationists, known as OF4WD. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for inviting us.
We're excited to have you guys. It's going to be a really neat conversation. The Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive and Recreationists does so much work in Ontario. And a lot of people don't realize when you guys are there, help keeping the trails open. And it's a truly incredible volunteer organization. So I can't wait to talk about it. First of all, I do want to mention real quickly that if you listeners are enjoying the show and you're getting something out of it, please subscribe on your local podcast app. And also check us out on Instagram and Facebook at 4x4 Canada. And as well, if you want to be a guest on our show, hit us up a DM on Instagram, or there is a form on our website at 4x4canadapodcast.com. You can fill out the form and let us know. We are interested in all kinds of people that we've had, all kinds of guests. We've had everything from YouTube stars. We've had off-road racers. We've had females that have gone down to the Rebel Rally in the States. Some guys are down to the King of the Hammers. They're coming on in a couple weeks here too. So we've got all kinds of mix. It's overlanders, it's off-road racers, it's just regular four-wheelers like you and I. We want to hear from everybody. And especially talking about the Instagram, check out our Wednesday post. We ask a question every Wednesday. Last week is, what is your favorite camping meal? Before that, we've had, what set of tires are you buying next? We've talked about where to go camping. We've talked about different events. Where are you going this summer for events? Camp NL is one of the things that came up, as well as the Overland North event, BC Overland Expo, all kinds of different events happening. Keep an eye on our Instagram for the question of the week coming up on Wednesday. And we really appreciate you guys' feedback on that. So we love hearing what everybody's got going on and what everybody's thoughts are. But like I mentioned, check out our weekly question because there's a lot of really neat ideas that you may not have heard before. So, but back to our guest today, as I mentioned, Brad, Chris, and Peter from the Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive Recreationists, OF4WD. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hi.
Thanks for having us again.
Thanks very much for inviting us.
Yeah. So who do we have here? We've got three guys, Peter, Brad, and Chris. Maybe if you guys can maybe fill us in a little bit about yourselves and what you do with the association.
Do we want to start with, I'll start. Peter Wood. I'm the president of the OF4WD. I've been the president since about 2007. I've been on the board since 2000, so seen quite a few changes and quite a bit of history of what's gone on with the Federation and with four-wheel drive recreation in Ontario. I wheel a Land Rover Defender. So I've got a short wheelbase Land Rover, so that's good. It's nice and maneuverable, short, say, smaller trucks, I think sometimes are a bit handy when you're out in the bush, especially in Ontario.
Okay.
And it's a diesel. It doesn't use much gas. It doesn't go very fast either. But it's super simple. I think there's probably 10 fuses in it. And there's no modules.
Great.
And once it's started, you don't even need the batteries.
And Brad, what's your involvement with the association?
I'm currently a volunteer. I was on the board for a number of years, but I stepped off a couple of years ago. I blame Chris for my involvement in the OF4WD.
I accept no responsibility for that.
Yeah, it was your fault. So back in 2015, I met Chris at a wing night with my local wheeling club, and we struck up a conversation. Got talking about the sport and what he does with the federation. Just a few weeks after that, the federation was having a booth in the OF4WD Roadshow at the Toronto Sportsman Show. And Chris asked me if I could help out. I'm a teacher. It's March break. I had some time off. So it was a great pairing. And then he convinced me to run for the board at the AGM a month and a half later. So I was only wheeling for a season, and here I am on the board of the Provincial Association. I still blame Chris. Started wheeling in about 2015. I blamed that on my wife because she bought the Jeep first, and then I bought one later. We both have 2-door JKs, 37-inch tires, 4-inch lifts, and basically have replaced the entire suspension on them over time. So although they started out as Saharas, they're not so much Saharas anymore.
And Chris, we now know that you're the troublemaker of the group by the sounds of it.
I inspire.
There we go.
A little bit about me. I joined the OF4WD as a member back in around 2008. I originally got involved as a volunteer in the trail mapping committee about a year later, and that's what wound up evolving into the OF4WD trail database. I joined the board formally in 2011, and my duties currently, I'm the sponsorship director. I also handle promotion and events and the OF4WD Roadshow. As for my off-roading history, I started back when I was 16, had my license, and started off-roading with two-wheel drive Mazda pickup trucks with stock tires, and basically just driving on whatever trail I could find. Back then, really didn't know where you could go. But when I got tired of getting stuck with that, picked up a 78 Toyota Land Cruiser. That was an awesome vehicle. It was unstoppable, but unfortunately so was the rust. And over the years, I've had several Jeeps. Our current is a 2004 TJ Rubicon that we ordered from the factory. It's gone through several reiterations and modifications, and currently it is now considered a TJ6. We stretched it 15 inches to LJ proportions. It's sitting on coilovers, 1 tons and 40s.
Wow.
Sounds like a beast. Of the later model Jeeps, I have to say the TJ is still one of my favorites. I know JK and JL, owners are going to hate on me for this, but the TJs, I've had a couple of them, and I honestly miss my TJ, my last one. So maybe one day I'll get back into another TJ for sure. So,
I may be a JK owner, but I think about buying a TJ on a regular basis.
And I'll probably get blamed for that too.
Peter, I don't hear many people saying they want to go into a Land Rover.
Are a little bit, I suppose they are a little bit niche. There's this misconception that they're expensive. Some Land Rovers are, but they're quite moderately priced Land Rovers. So if you're looking at Disco 2s or Disco 1s, they're exceptional vehicles. You've got the live axles on it, but also you've got very heavy-duty CV joints on them. So instead of UJs, you've got a gear-driven transfer case in them. So they're actually pretty good vehicles. And now Disco 2s, even in the Land Rover community, is a little bit controversial because of not necessarily the best reliability record, but that was what 2003, that was a vehicle I bought when I started wheeling in Canada, and I loved it. It was reliable.
Yep.
I must have had the only one, but it was reliable.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I will give Peter credit. We've been on trails together, and he's done everything that I've done. So I have to say, yes, they are quite cheap.
Not to get off topic too much, but I'm going to throw a shout out to Ray and Marianne from the BC Overland Rally. And we've got an episode coming up with them. I've already taped it. So I believe in 2 or 3 weeks, we have an interview coming up with them. And they took their that he found a beat up Land Rover in somebody's backyard. He spent a couple weeks working on it, brought it to a BC Land Rover event. It caught on fire on the way there. They fixed it up at the event. They took it from the event to the ports and shipped it over to England. They shipped it over to London, and they drove it from London to, it's not Taiwan. And Ray's going to kill me on this. I'm going to have to go back and say exactly what it was. But they drove it with three boys, this beat up Land Rover from London over to Tibet kind of idea. And it was just an absolute story. So listeners, you got to check this out when it comes out in 2-3 weeks. The story behind this event where these guys, they're breaking down every fourth or fifth day, and they're breaking down in India or Greece, Italy, and Iran and Iraq, and they're going through all these different areas that you never would expect. And it's a family of 5 in a beat up Land Rover. It's a story. It's hilarious. And you guys got to listen to it when it comes out in a couple of weeks, because it's an adventure that nobody will ever be able to do again. Right. So that's my side tangent. Let's get back to the OF4WD. Where can our listeners find out more information? We'll put this in the show notes, but where can our listeners find out information about the OF4WD?
We've got a website, pretty simple to find, OF4WD.com. Our name, that works. We're on the socials. So Facebook, there is an OF4WD Facebook page. You can search for Camp NL, and you can search for the Ontario 4-wheel drive community page. All of those are connected to us, or ours, I suppose. We're also on Instagram, hashtag OF4WD. Very original, I know, but it works.
Keep it simple. So for our listeners who are saying, you guys keep on talking about OF4WD, but what is it? Like, we've touched briefly on it, but what is the OF4WD?
Basically, it's a provincial federation, it's in the same mold as the Ontario Federation of Snowmobile Clubs and ATV clubs. So they're basically like provincial leaders. It's an umbrella organization made up of clubs, primarily of clubs. That's how it started out. We've since added individual membership as well. But essentially, that's what it is. It's a mechanism for pooling resources and efforts and communication. And it's just leveraging all of sort of those club activities and bringing people together. So that's really what it's about.
Been around for over 25 years now.
25 years.
Yes. 1998 was when it was first formed. And so if you want a little bit of the history, we can talk about that if you like. It's up to you. Basically, the history of it started in 1998, and it was basically 4 clubs that started. It started off with a loan from the Central Ontario 4-wheel drive club. So they really kicked it off from day one. And the mandate, as I described, it was basically to bring wheelers together, the wheeling community together. And so it was about education. It was about fighting for land access rights as well. One of the trigger points for starting the organization was some land use changes that were going on at the time in 98. So that was the trigger to get a little bit more organized.
Big things that we see with the OF4WD is the trails. And you guys have a bit of a different system in Ontario compared to some of the other provinces. Part of your issues is the trails are closed. All the trails are closed until May 1st, I believe. But that is a great cooperation with the snowmobile clubs. And it's something we talked a little bit earlier about working with some of the other organizations like snowmobile clubs and mountain bike clubs and that. Is that something that there's a lot of cross work between the organizations?
Yep. There's so just with regard to those dates, that was basically a trigger for that was the Ministry of Natural Resources. We various groups had relationships with the Ministry of Natural Resources for various events and things that they were doing and trail work. And there was a lot of overlap in terms of locations. And so we actually pulled the organizations together. It was lent on the M&R a little bit. And so the Halliburton Highlands Stewardship Council helped host the initial events back in 2010. We came together as the Off-Road Vehicle Initiative, and it was just a meeting. And And where the May the 1st date came from was they were concerned about early season trail use, and because they were concerned about the erosion that was going on. And so they thought the best approach to this would be to bring the people to the table and discuss it. So that's what we did. And that was where we hit a reasonable consensus point. There was a few dates discussed at the time, but that was the reasonable consensus point for starting. And then the December date, that basically coincides with the snowmobile season. But our work with these organizations, that was where the relationship started. And that's where discussion points arose. And that's where we find when people are a bit more candid when you're around the table together. And so the Snowmobile Club, they expressed some concerns about some areas. And anyway, good long story short, we helped them out. There was a big blowdown in 2011. And we put together quite a big crew for helping out, clearing trails, etc. Worked with the ATV and the Snowmobile associations. And it was such a great success that we formed a group, and we meet every year for looking at trail maintenance and sharing trail issues. And that's been going on, as I say, ever since. And so we're on this level of cooperation now outside of M&R. And yes, we share trail projects, do cost sharing on bridges. And we have a meeting every year to actually discuss what needs to be done on the trails. And then we put together a project plan and decide how we're going to apportion the costs. And that's how we do it.
Amazing.
So we've met the May 1st date a couple of times. Keep in mind that we do every year look at the weather, look at how wet things have been. And we often ask people, depending on the season, let's hold off a little bit. May 1st is the official date. The unofficial date that a lot of people follow is the May 4th weekend. Sometimes early season, May, we encourage people not to go out too early. And May 2-4 is the unofficial, let's all go.
And the reasoning behind this is to help with keeping the trails so the trails aren't being degraded through mud and ruts and all that kind of, erosion, etc. So it's not that you're just there to cater to the snowmobile guys or whatever. It's there to keep the trails in good shape so you can keep on going back and not having to do as much trail maintenance on them.
That's right. Early season ruts can be pretty deep and they can last for the season.
Yeah, I was going to say, thanks very much for adding that piece about, because obviously also different trails have, the location makes a lot of difference. And also some trails are wetter than others. Some of them are very hard packed Canadian Shield, pretty good fairly early on, but there's others you really don't need to let dry out. And some of them you're better off waiting until you're right into there's one or two trails that you really should be waiting to get into the sort of late June, July timeframe, really.
Yeah.
So
it boils down to that whole tread lightly thought process. Now, one of the other things too that I think is great is that you guys are working with these other organizations and you're all working together to keep the trails open for ongoing future generations or the next 5 years. Because I've seen through other associations and that where sometimes people are arguing with the quad people or going against the snowmobile people and stuff like that, and nothing good becomes of that. So working together with these other organizations is helping all these other, not only yourselves, but as a four-wheel drive enthusiast, but also other organizations, and working to keep the trails going between all of those organizations. So hands off to you guys, because that's it's a lot of work, and I know you guys may get some feedback from it. The only way to keep these trails open is to work together with other user groups.
Yep. And it's always worthwhile trying to consider the other person's point of view. Whenever you're in a position where you're dealing with other organizations, typically they'll have a viewpoint or a request or something they're looking for. And so really it pays to got two ears for a reason and to hear what they've got to say and try and be sympathetic to their viewpoint. And I say the trails are used by all of us. And if we be mindful of their use and their needs, and then essentially what we're essentially creating a stronger group, a more cohesive motorized group, which is just nothing but good news down the road, right? If we're going to keep trails open.
Yep, definitely. Now, I touched briefly on it before about the tread lightly. And that's a common saying in the four-wheeling community or even the other motorized recreation groups about that. But I can't stress enough the importance of tread lightly. Chris, can you maybe fill some of our listeners in on what the tread lightly thought process is?
Tread lightly thought process is obviously we want to keep wheeling on these lands, so we have to maintain them. We can't let them deteriorate. As mentioned at the beginning of the season, if we go in when the trails are too wet, not only do you create ruts, but that also creates drainage issues that can cause flooding in other areas that can write off sections for the season. The whole principle behind tread lightly is to get out on these trails with minimal impact. In theory, you should be able to go and run a trail and nobody should be able to tell. There shouldn't be any significant signs to it. And it's all about working with the environment, with the other user groups, and just to help maintain what we all enjoy.
Yep. And speaking of that, let's talk about the Adopt a Trail program. Your organization, the OF4WD, has come up with a program, from my understanding, where a club will take a trail that is local to them or a favorite to them and help maintain, basically adopt that trail for the year. Can you tell us a little bit about the Adopt a Trail program?
So Adopt a Trail is a lot like the Adopt a Road programs that you see in various provinces. Groups of volunteers basically step up to the plate, let us know that they want to be responsible for that trail for that year, and they take care of it. Minimum requirements for our Adopt a Trail is they have to run it near the start and near the end of the season and report back to us what the condition of the trail is. Is there any remediation that needs to be done? Is there any trees down on it? Any work that needs to be done? Any braiding starting to appear? Basically, just give us a report on what the conditions are. But most of our, not all of our clubs that get involved with Adopt a Trail, they go above and beyond the minimum requirements. We see trail cleanups happening. They ask us, what are we allowed to do for maintenance? What aren't we allowed to do? So we give them guidelines on what they can do, and they'll do maintenance on it. I've seen one club take not just the trail, but the kind of the area around the trail and the highway on both ends and do a cleanup on it because it needed some work. So really, it's just to be good trail stewards and help the community by helping the trail and keeping it in good shape.
One thing with the OF4RD, I believe, Wes, you said BC doesn't have this, but here in Ontario, we have a trail mapping system, the Trail Index. Basically, with membership with the OF4RD, you can get access to this index. And what we wanted to talk to a bit about was, how is that curated? How do you guys map the trails? And just start from there.
Sure. So the Trail Index is, like you say, a benefit of being a member of OF4WD. It's behind the paywall on our website. It was created by volunteers, guys and girls that went out, ran the trails, recorded GPX tracks or already had GPX tracks for it, and submitted them to the organization. We have a great volunteer, Evan Crossgreen. I always say his last name wrong. Sorry if I said it wrong, Evan. He's our trail index guru. So he takes the tracks that have come in and he puts them on the trail index, puts it in a mapping system. You can download the GPX tracks. We mentioned earlier trail reports. Trail reports get put into the trail index so you can look and see, oh, last year near the end of the season, there was a report that this hole in this particular trail has got too deep. I'm going to avoid that. Or here in this trail, there was a problem with this, but it's been fixed since, so I know I'm good to go. Don't know how many trails are there, to be honest. There's a lot.
There's a lot of
trails.
There's
a lot. Most of the trails that we have are old logging roads or old trails that are no longer used, old sled trails that are used by us. And they're also used by other user groups, ATVs, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, hunters, lots of people use them. But for us, our members, the key is if you're not sure where the trail is, it helps you find the start of the trail, helps you find the end of the trail, and helps make sure you stay on the trail. Because when you're on a trail, it's really easy if you don't have a track of the trail. Oh, there's a little side road over here. There's a little offshoot over here. Oh, and you have the GPX track right where you're allowed to go and, oh, I'm not going to go check that out. Some of them lead to hunt camps. Some of them lead to private land where you're allowed to be at all times when you're on the trail.
It's such a good system. Wes, you guys should have that out there. Just saying.
Yeah, it definitely has been talked about in BC and Alberta, but it's something that needs somebody to take an initiative and start with it, as well as Brad mentioned on another episode to maintain it as well too. So it is definitely a big process, and hats off to you guys for sure, because it's a lot of work, but I think it's really, especially for new people, really a great idea. Now, the trail maps, and they've also got a trail rating system too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we've done is we created a trail rating system when we were doing the database. It's actually a 10-point system starting from 1 to 5 plus. A level 1 is what I call an angry dirt road. When we start getting newbies involved, we're doing everything from a 1 plus up into a 2 plus. Then you find your more seasoned wheelers with a more built vehicle. They're getting into the 3s, the 4s. And then at the upper end, we have ones for people that have a lot of experience and very well built, purpose built rigs. And they play around at the higher end of that scale.
Which trail is the most used on that index, would you say? Do you guys have an idea?
We don't
that's
keep
hard
a
to say.
metric on which ones use the most. It's actually a little difficult to do that because we have groups that go out without logging into the trail database if they're familiar with it. There are a lot that are popular. The big thing is we just try and encourage people to use as many different ones as they can, explore what's out there, and try and get everything spread out as wide as we can.
I know you guys are a province-wide organization. Are most of the trails based up in that Calabogie and over into Minden area? Or do you guys have a lot of trails heading up in Sudbury and farther north?
Yeah, basically in North Peterborough is really where it starts in terms of region. And then, say, East Ontario, you mentioned up west of Ottawa, starting around that Calabogie area, or across to Perry Sound. So the sort of through that area. There's a trail system up. It's actually an organized trail system up around Mattawa area called the VMUTS trail system, the Voyager Multi-Use Trail System. So that is one that's got local community support and was set up. And you can go there and, as I say, a great system. If you can take the time to go and take a look at that, it's a little bit out of the way. It's a bit of a drive to get there, but it's well worth it. And something else, if you've not been up around that area, I recommend it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. With this all being done by volunteers and that, if people wanted to, say they're up in Thunder Bay or something like that, and they wanted to have mapped areas in their, or mapped trail runs in their areas, it's just a matter of becoming a member of the association, as well as contacting and go from there, right? Because basically being a volunteer organization, you're asking for input from your members.
Absolutely. And on our website, there's a link to submit a trail Jeep track.
And we can also help you with setting up a club as well. If you're up in those areas and we don't have representation up there at the minute, then if you're interested and you've got some buddies that are willing to pull together and set up a club, we can absolutely help with that.
Yeah, because there's some beautiful wheeling up in Northern Ontario. I fell in love with it years ago. And while Minden and all those other areas are cool, there's some really great wheeling up in Northern Ontario as well, too. Now, we mentioned newbie runs earlier. What is the scoop with newbie runs?
So the newbie run it's a program that we started, say, about 9 years ago, I think, 8-9 years ago. And we're always getting people that wanted to get involved in the sport, but didn't know where to go, what trails to go on, where to even find the trails. One of the most common things I hear from people at events is they want to come out to a newbie run, but they think first they need to go and modify their vehicle, put bigger tires, a lift, a winch, things like that. And this is our opportunity to show them what you need to get started is just the right attitude and a capable vehicle. And The vehicles these days from the manufacturers, they are extremely capable right out of the box. When we host a newbie run, we have I think about 6 that we do each season, plus ones that we do through Campanelle. And we'll start off by having everybody meet at the base camp, which we do out of the Kinmount Fairgrounds. That's our base camp. It's located right in Halliburton Highland area, and it's pretty much ground zero for a large majority of trails in that area. We'll start off in the morning with we call it the morning sermon. That's where we're talking to the group, and we're talking about everything from vehicle features, vehicle safety, how to use those features. We talk about how to read the trail, how to deal with certain obstacles, the correct passage. We talk about vehicle recovery. And we also talk a lot about guiding and instructions. That's one of the key things because a lot of people, they tend to be nervous and we want to keep them focused. After that, we will break up. We keep the runs small. So we'll have 10 vehicles on a run. And with that, we'll always have 2 or 3 seasoned trail guides. These are our top trail guides that'll be out there teaching the people. We break off into 4 or 5 different groups, and the groups will be pre-selected based on the information that the participants given us as to their past experience and what their vehicle has. And then they all head out on the trail for the day and they're guided through. The people that we have guiding, they're not just saying, hey, this is the way to go. They're showing them this is how you go over the obstacle. They're there to answer questions. They're there to teach and there to inspire confidence to get people hooked.
Get people hooked.
That's one of the neatest things when you go through with some people that are fairly new to the sport and watching their faces and their smiles after they do an obstacle that they thought was absolutely ridiculous and they went over it easily. So that sense of satisfaction they get in their smiles, nothing better than that.
Absolutely.
So I guess one thing we actually didn't talk about, we should talk about, is membership. So how should someone basically sign up and get more information about OF4WD, become a member? And we talked about having access to the map trails and other things. With the membership, what are they getting with OF4WD?
Basically, the big thing in becoming a member, what you're doing is you're supporting the organization and our initiatives. The work that we do benefits people, whether they're members or not. But obviously, we like them to be members because, one, it gives us strength in numbers when dealing with the different municipalities, the different organizations. It shows that we are a large and organized group. Benefits that you have, it gives you access to events that we're involved in, such as our newbie run series. They are free to our members. It allows you to come out to events such as Campanelle. Get into that one in a moment. And it's a good source for people for learning, finding out what's happening with the trails, keeping everyone updated.
And how much is membership?
A individual membership is $50 for the year, which these days that's less than a quarter tank of gas. And if you sign up through a member club, then typically they are charging $25 for the membership plus whatever their club fees are.
To be honest with you, I think $50 is, even if people are not super interested in certain parts of the association or the organization, $50, that money goes towards keeping those trails open. Mm-hmm. And that right there to me is worth $50 a year. Mm-hmm. I've been involved, as we talked off air, I've been involved in a little bit in the Ontario side, but definitely on the BC side. And there is so much money that goes for simple things like trail maintenance and stuff like that a lot of people don't realize. It's no matter what the benefits are from a personal standpoint, I think it's worth the $50 for what you guys do to help out your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much.
And if you want to become a member,
even just the administrative costs of the insurance alone, that's very expensive. So even just to keep the association going, there is a amount we need each year just keep going. And the organization and the reach that we've got and the capability for keeping trails open, I think it's not a well understood concept. That side of it isn't well understood. You start talking about land use plans and things like that, you quite often get people, eyes will glaze over fairly quickly. They've got shiny boxes that can open or whatever, or really the big thing that other organizations have that we don't is they actually do, in some cases, they've got a lot of private land agreements, and the OFSC, there's actually supporting legislation for them to operate, and you need to have an OFSC trail permit, where there isn't that backdrop for our recreation. So it is very much a voluntary thing that people join.
Yeah. What are you sitting at for members these days?
Okay. The thing is, actually, we do have the renewal period runs from January 1st through to December 31st. Mm-hmm. But you can imagine that people's interests usually starts when the wheeling season starts. And then when there's events like Campanella or whatever they want to get involved in, that's when it peaks. The membership numbers through the year, you've got an average peak rate, and we've seen growth on that. And the numbers now, you're over 2,000 for where we're at, and when we're in that for direct members. And then we've got, there's a lot of people that are with clubs and with Facebook groups, etc. So the actual four-wheel drive community is very large. If we could capture more of that community to actually directly join us for the sake of $25 or $50, that would be ideal. So really, if one message I would like to get out over this podcast is, please, for the sake of next to nothing, please just join the OF4WD, and you can pick a club, get a discount code, and good to go for $25.
Okay.
And I think as a Jeep, if for all those Jeep owners, that's probably the smallest amount of money you're going to spend on your Jeep.
But it is
Go ahead,
important.
Brad.
And Peter, thanks for saying that, because just from being in a few clubs and talking and doing trails with newbies and doing newbie runs, a lot of people don't know or aware of the OF4WD, and that you guys are doing trail advocacy, you're doing trail maintenance, and you guys are the volunteers that are helping keeping this stuff open, not just for Jeeps or off-road vehicles, but you're, like you said, joining with the ATVs and the dirt bikes and the snowmobiles for everyone. And a lot of people don't understand that. And then you tell people, are like, oh, really? And you're like, yeah. How do you think we have this land to wheel on? Because of these guys. So thank you.
One of the other things too is I've seen it from my side working with associations. When associations or organizations like the OF4WD go to the government and say, hey, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5,000 members, the more members that they have, the more pull they have, kind of idea. Hey, we've got 5,000 members, or we've got 3,000 members, whatever your numbers are. Then to say, oh, it's not just a couple hundred people. Now we have a lot more people standing behind your organization.
Yeah. And working with the other motorized groups, you suddenly become quite you are a body of which significant representation in some of these areas. And as you well know, I'm sure that this is the entertainment in a lot of these areas. You don't have all of the facilities of downtown and the crown land area, so they can go out angling and hunting. A lot of folks have ATVs. A lot of folks go out on these trails. They are very important to the local community. So from a representation point of view, it does pay to have an ear on these things, and this is a significant group to consider when you're thinking about policy and positions.
There's something that I've often thought about, trying to work some sort of a survey kind of idea to see what the financial impact is of four-wheel drive enthusiasts around, say, Ontario or BC, whatever it is. Because when you think about it, you go to a gas station and there's 10 rigs gassing up. They're grabbing chips. They're stopping at the A&W. They're hitting that grocery store as well. They're stopping at Bancroft to get gas. They're stopping at Minden to get gas. The economic benefit of what we do is huge to some of these small towns. Mm-hmm. It's massive, right? Quite often you see 10 or 12 rigs pull up and they've just spent $1,500 worth of gas at the gas station.
Yeah. There's actually, many years ago now, there was an Ontario Trail Strategy that was started by the government. And in there was a study done working with the associations. and to put together some numbers for the economic benefit of it. And then beyond that, some of the groups have actually paid for their own studies, and more than once, as some associations I can think of have actually got some studies that have been recently worked on that are available. They do take time to put together, and typically for them to stand with and have credibility, they need to be put in place with a consultant. We need to go through a process to do this. We did, say, participate in that Ministry of Health promotion one way back when they were doing the Ontario Trail Strategy. But we really do need to consider that and look at it, because I think it is a very important aspect that is of interest to the to government, especially. They want to know in those communities, what are you contributing, right?
Yep. And I think a lot of the communities are in favor of the outdoor recreation. A lot of the people in the communities are motorized outdoor recreation enthusiasts themselves, but they also see the financial benefits of our groups going into their towns and that. So earlier there was mention of Camp NL. What is Camp NL?
So Camp NL is our flagship event. This is it's an awesome event. It's 3 days of guided trail runs, camping, catered meals. We have nightly entertainment and socializing. We have games. And on the Saturday night, we do a large raffle, which is partially aided through the assistance of our sponsors. With that, we raise money for the organization and also for some of the local charities that are in the areas that we wheel. Let's see, last year on the prize table, we had over $25,000 in off-road and overland related prizes that were given away. And with that, over the years, it's allowed us to do things such as donate $100,000 at this point to the Halliburton Highland Hospital Association,
Wow.
which is central for that area.
That's incredible. That's huge.
It's definitely a great event. This year will be, as I mentioned, our 20th running of it. So it's going to be a big one. If I can do a quick little blurb here, It's August 15th to the 18th. And you do have to have a membership for that to attend. As far as the size of it, last year we were around 350 rigs, I believe, in total. So it's a good event. It's definitely, it's a large family event as well.
Whereabouts is it held?
It's held at the Kinmount Fairgrounds, the same place that we host the newbie runs out of. This will be our third year at this location, because as the event has grown, we've needed to move to larger facilities, and the facilities here are just absolutely beautiful. We do a lot of work with the Kinmount Fairground organizers to pre-clean before our event and also before a large fair event that they host there. And it's worked out really well for us.
So can you give us a bit of a rundown on an average day at the event? So let's take a Friday or a Saturday. How does the event go? How does the day go?
It starts off in the morning. Everybody comes to the arena where we have the catered breakfast. At the same time, there'll be a sign-up table for the various trails. We're usually running, I think, about 20, 25 trails of varying difficulty. And there'll be sign-up lists there. We also have our trail guides that'll be on hand to answer any questions. So if people aren't sure, is this a trail that suits me? Am I built well enough for this? They can get them slotted into the right area. Then the groups will go and head out and do their various trail runs. In the background, the event staff are just busy cleaning, getting things organized, getting everything ready. Once they come back from the day, everybody kind of relaxes. We'll be hosting some various games. Some of them involve vehicles, things like closest to the peg, small slalom, blind driver, things like that. And then we also have others that are just more physical challenges, like the wheel change. There's various games that will go on the Friday night. Typically, we have music and a large communal campfire for everybody to gather around, get to know everybody. And then, as mentioned, on the Saturday night, that's when we do our big presentation and the prize raffle.
Cool.
Everything I've heard about
about dinner.
Oh,
and dinner.
Yes.
Everything I've heard about Camp NL has been absolutely wonderful. As you mentioned, family-based, and I don't think I've heard a negative thing about Camp NL. So all our Ontario listeners, you got to check this event out, August 15th to 18th. And yeah, it's been such a positive event. Trisha,
Yeah.
have you ever competed in a blindfold driver race?
No, but that sounds so exciting. Or the wheel change. I would totally do the wheel change with my crew if they came.
The blindfold driver, the way that works is we'll have a driver in a vehicle with typically a welding mask that's blacked out.
Yeah.
It's not racing by any means.
No.
You have that person, and then you have their, not their co-pilot, but their navigator who stands outside of the vehicle and tells them, turn left, turn, go, stop. And they have a small little course that they go through with pylons.
Oh my God.
So
Definitely.
it really is entertaining, especially when you get a husband and wife couple in there. 'Cause they don't always communicate that well.
We used to call it the divorce race.
The key there, it's not about speed, it's about the accuracy of going through the course.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Slow is better and not touching any pylons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an absolute riot to watch. I've participated and watched a lot of them, and it's quite interesting to see some of the communication. I've done them where a passenger or the other person been sitting beside you, and they're trying to point which way to go. Go that way. Go this way. And it doesn't work that way when you're blindfolded. But
What about the wheel change? Is that like a race, like a pit stop, like wheel change fastest?
It's essentially a pit stop change.
Yeah.
We have someone that's gone and made a bracket for us with a pair of wheel hubs, and we'll have a tire bolted to the one hub.
Mm-hmm.
You're given a power wrench,
Mm-hmm.
and then we just time you and see how quick you can get it off of the one hub, move it over to the next, get all the wheel lugs on.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's fun. I'm excited because I'm planning to go this year. So this will be my first time going, but I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Hopefully a great event.
yeah, it sounds like a fun time. And that's what we got to make it all about, is fun and having laughter. So
The other good thing about this too is that we get a lot of new people that will come out just starting in the sport. They'll come out to this. And we do have some 101 courses that we'll do at the event so that they can get their feet wet that way. But this also gives you a chance to meet and to friend other fellow wheelers. Because the other thing that we always hear, especially after a newbie run, it's like, that was great, but how do I go again? People that you've just been wheeling with today, get some names, make some friends.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not part of a club, start your own little group just to find people to go wheeling with.
yeah, for sure. Is there any other events? Like, I know you guys are doing newbie runs throughout the year, and you got the Camp NL. Is there any other events you guys are involved with?
So we've got volunteer events that we pull people into, help with things. But in terms of fun event, it's primarily the association events, are primarily just Camp NL and Newbie Run.
Yeah.
But I know Brad and Chris, they mentioned a wing night that they attend. And so I think there are a lot of side social events that go on. And they can speak to it better than I can.
So on our website, there's a calendar of events. All of the member clubs can submit, this is what we're doing. We're doing a run here. We're doing a win night here. Here's our big event of the season. They submit them, they go on the calendar, and people can have a look at the calendar to see what's going on during the season.
There is a particular event that I'd like to mention as well. It's not actually an OF4WD event, but it's run and organized by someone who's been an OF4WD volunteer for a long time. It's a great event. It's called Not a Pavement Princess, and it's a series that was run and organized by Amber Block. The basis for this is Amber had been involved with us with the newbie runs for a long time, and she was noticing that there was a definite difference in ratio of men to women out there on the trails.
Mm-hmm.
And talking with a lot of ladies, they found that a lot of them felt a little intimidating getting out, knowing where to start. So she created this event where it's all lady drivers. The guides are ladies. Everybody involved in it. Sometimes there's a couple of people there just to help with recovery, but it's all centered around everybody just learning at a pace that they're comfortable with. It's an awesome event, and I believe this year will be the 7th running of it.
I believe so. I agree. Trisha has a lot more experience with this, but I do want to mention that we did have Amber on the show last April, and definitely recommend our listeners to go back. And if you haven't heard this episode, it's a really empowering event for women. And Trisha, perhaps you can enlighten us a bit more on that.
Mm-hmm. You're right. It's very empowering. It's needed. And it's just a fun event. Amber is an amazing, awesome girl. When I started wheeling, actually was at her first event when she held it the first year. And I think I've gone almost every year since the last 5-6 years or how many years she's had it on. But like you said, it's an event of all ladies. We get out to the trails all day long. We camp that weekend too. And it's just fun and empowering, and you get to learn a lot of things. And like you said, sometimes it could be intimidating going to other clubs and other events. And if you're with a group full of men, which is fine, but sometimes it could be intimidating. So it's just a great way to get out there and learn. And the camaraderie of being all women and together is pretty cool. And yes, if you haven't gone back, listen to the episode with Amber, go check out Not a Paper Princess on Facebook, and they also have Instagram as well. But Facebook is where you can find out the event for this year. I had a privilege last year to actually trail guide for her on one of the trails. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, Brad, we have something new and exciting to talk about. We touched base about it a little earlier, I believe, but there's something important happening with the OF4WD that you've been working on, and we want to bring awareness to as well. I mean, there's a whole bunch of great and wonderful stuff going on with the OF4WD, but maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the GMSR radio stuff.
The GMRS, absolutely. So this is
Maybe let's start with what GMRS is. The basics for somebody that may not know what the heck we're talking about.
Ground Mobile Radio System, if I remember right, for the acronym, but everyone just says GMRS. It's all about communications on the trail. When you're on a trail, your tail gunner needs to be able to talk to your lead guide. Your lead guide wants to be able to talk to the mid-pack, the mid-gunner. And any participants, you want to be able to hear what's going on. You want to be able to give them instructions. Even just some friendly banter on the trail as you're going through makes the whole experience more fun. So you want to be able to talk on the trail. Now, there's different models across Canada, because this isn't just an OF4WD thing anymore. This has grown past OF4WD and gone across Canada. In different provinces, there's different histories and different models for communication on the trail. In Ontario, traditionally, historically, CB has been king. CB is great. It's had its day. It definitely has some challenges on the trail. It's an AM system, and the overgrowth, the trees, all the little things that are living tend to absorb AM signals a lot more than FM signals. And there's all kinds of other technical stuff behind it. But GMRS is a superior communications technology for on the trail. In Canada, it's all the airwaves are run by I got to get the acronym right, the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Department of Canada, ISED. They say what types of devices can be used on what part of the airwaves and how much power you can use and what your antennas can look like. They control everything, basically. So about a year ago, I decided to reach out to them and say, what's going on with GMRS in Canada? Because in Canada, we're limited to a little bit of variation, but 4 watts. And the regulations say you must have a fixed antenna. So an antenna that's directly attached to your GMRS unit. That means we can't have mobile rigs in Canada. You can't install one in your vehicle. And it means, unlike the US, we can't have repeaters. We can't have higher power. So in this wheeling in the States, GMRS is king. They use it extensively. They're mounted in the vehicles. They have higher power. They're at 50 watts, a lot of them. And they have repeaters. A repeater is basically a fixed station somewhere in the trail area that can take your signal and rebroadcast it. Canada, off-roading and all kinds of other sports are at, in our mind, a disadvantage because of the current regulations. A year or so ago, I reached out to them and say, what's going on? We talked back and forth a little bit, but the end of it at that point was, this isn't something we're looking at changing right now. So I went away and I thought about it, and I've messaged back and forth a couple of times. Earlier this calendar year, they messaged me, and they messaged anyone that had expressed interest, that the regulations on GMRS are up for discussion, that they're going to be doing a public consultation. Great. This is what we want. We want them to be able to hear our voice, that we need things to change for GMRS in Canada. Now, ideally, they'll take our feedback and go to a policy consultation. The policy has to change, then regulations change. But we have an opportunity to tell ISED that we're looking for changes. I started, with the OF4WD's permission, a social media campaign. It's on the Facebook page for OF4WD. The consultation takes the form of a web form that you can fill out. There's instructions there. You go to their website. There's a web form to click on, and there's a bunch of questions to answer. And people can do one of two things. They can fill in the answers themselves, or I've put out a set of standard, here's what we need to change. Here's what we want you to tell them. So our membership has been regularly doing that. Each email, you can fill out the form, your name, your email, answer the questions. A few years ago, Peter and I started discussions with some of the other associations in Canada. So this is a Canada-wide regulation. It's not just Ontario. So we started reaching out to them. At this point, we have confirmed participation in this campaign from groups in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Quebec, Ontario, Alberta. I added Alberta just recently, Peter. Had told you that, yes? And BC. So right across the country, there's people looking at our information. Quebec group has translated it to French for us, and they put it on their areas, their sites in French, so that all of us can get together right across the country and say, hey, ISED, the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, we need this to change. So we're hopeful that we'll see some change. Now, this is not going to be a short process. If you've done any work with any kind of bureaucracy, you know it takes time. But this is our first step. Our first step is just letting them know that it's just not just me, not just one guy talking back and forth to the director of ISED saying we need change. We have lots and lots of people. Similar to joining OF4WD, strength in numbers, the more people in the country that message them and say, we need this to change, the more likely it is that they're going to take us seriously. So phase 2 of our campaign is coming up soon. I'll be putting out a new message for anyone that's following along and wants to get involved, where we'll be emailing the same kind of information, the same request directly to the minister that's responsible. So we want him to know that we want the department to know that we want these changes to happen. Hopeful. It's our opportunity to engage with the government and say that changes need to happen. Are we going to be successful? I'm very optimistic, but who knows? We know how these things go sometimes, but we're trying. And all we can do at this point is try. That's part of being a Canadian, engaging with your government and saying change needs to happen. And here's the opportunity.
I'm just looking right now at your Facebook page, the Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive Recreationists, and there was a post put out on March 2nd that sort of really laid it out. And yeah. I believe it was probably written by you, Brad, but it really lays it out, as well as has a link there. And then there's also some questions were answered in the comments as well, too. So definitely recommend going to Facebook to the Ontario Federation of 4-Wheel Drive Recreationists and having a look at that post, because there's a lot of really good information in there as to why we want these changes to be made. And it's got the link and all that. So I find it quite interesting. Out here in BC, we use VHF and ham radios and stuff like that. But I think going to the GMRS is a lot simpler format, because it is a big deal over here to get licensed and to get licensed properly. And then you got commercial and you got the amateur, and, legally I'm supposed to have 2 radios in my truck to run and all that kind of stuff. Whereas I think we can work with the GMRS all across Canada and get those, bump it up to the 50 watts and be able to put antennas on the rigs and stuff like that.
If we're successful here, this will be my 3rd different radio in my rig. I've got a CB, actually 4th. I've got a CB, I've got a handheld CB to give to people that I'm guiding. I've got a ham radio, a VA3 CBU, and I'm hopefully eventually going to have a GMRS.
Definitely worth looking into. It's a bigger thing that a lot of people don't realize. So once again, go and check out that Facebook page, because there's all kinds of information on there as that link, and pay attention to the OF4WD Facebook, because like I say, there is updates will be happening on there, not only for the GMRS, but as well as all your events like your Camp NL and everything else you got going on in your guys' world over there. So
Facebook is where a lot of our information goes out, but there's a lot on our website too.
Is there any sponsors you'd like to give a shout out to that works with you guys?
We've got a large list of sponsors. I'll give a shout out to some of our oldest and some of the golds that have been around for some time. Brody Industries, they're known for trucking lights, but they're also the innovator of the lighting. Rock Spider 4x4, Stang's Fat, TFT Off-Road, TMR Customs, Dirty Dog 4x4, Trailhead Customs, and Action Car and Truck Accessories. There's a lot more that I could name, but we'd be here for a while. I'd like to thank them all for what they've done. And actually, if I can give a shout out to somebody else as well, I'd like to thank all the volunteers, the people that go and give their time. And quite often when they're volunteering, it's not just giving their time, they're giving their gas, they're using their vehicle. There could be an expense to it that they're all adding in and chipping in towards it. And also somebody that we haven't actually talked about is Colin Jardine. He is our organizer for Camp NL. He's been organizing that now for, I think we're 8 years, 8 maybe. And he's the one that he starts on this early in the season and keeps all the cats herded and keeps everything on the rail. So it's definitely a big job, and he pulls it off every year.
That is a job that is massive. You've obviously got people helping, and there's lots of volunteers helping out with that job, but to all those volunteers that help out at all you guys' events, whether they're trail maintenance days or newbie runs or Camp NL, it is a volunteer-based organization. And I agree 100% with you. Big thank you to all the volunteers, whether you're just helping out a little bit or if you're more involved, whichever. People can give whatever time they can. It's definitely a worthwhile cause for sure.
And just joining is a big contribution as well. So
yep,
people can do that. It'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we missed that you guys wanted to talk about?
Oh, the last time I was on the show, you asked us about tips and gear we recommend. And I've got a different answer this time. So I've got to get that out there.
You bet. Let's hit it.
All right. Tips and gear. Last time I talked about gear, this time I'm going to talk about tips. The tip is simple. Never wheel alone. Always go out on the trail with another rig. People go out on their own sometimes, especially when they're new in the sport. And then there's posts going on Facebook. I'm stuck here, stuck there. I know you guys had Trillium Off-Road Recovery on the show at one point. Fantastic organization doing great work. But ideally, we don't go alone. We don't get stuck. Go with another rig every time, please. Make sure there's at least 2 of you, if not 3. That's my tip this time.
And just to add to Brad's comment there, when we say make sure there's 2 or 3 of you, we're talking 2 or 3 vehicles, not 2 or 3 people in the same vehicle.
Yeah.
Sometimes that needs to be explained.
Threesomes are a lot more fun, right? So I have to admit, guys, I am bad for that, but I also know when to stop and turn around. But I always get heck from a lot of my friends about going out alone. But I agree 100% with you. Try and go out with at least 1 or 2 other vehicles when possible. 100%. Yeah.
And the other thing that I'd add to that is people are always going and buying new equipment. They're always getting upgrades, latest recovery equipment, winches, things like that. Having those things on the trail, they're great to have. But if you've just gone and bought that, don't just slap it on the vehicle or throw it in the bag and then wait until you actually get stuck to figure out how to use it. Test it first, learn how to use it properly. There's tons of safety videos out there on the web, and we do a fair bit of instruction for that as well. But we also have some great sponsors like Afraid Not Ropes that are definitely more than capable of answering any questions people have about how to properly recover.
And make sure you have it in your vehicle as well. Leave it in the garage.
No doubt. Do you guys do courses as well? I know you guys have your newbie events, but do you guys hold courses as well too?
That's more of our member clubs do some of that. I know last time I was on, I talked about Core JC doing guide training. So mostly that gets left to the clubs, the individuals. We're not as much in that area other than our newbie runs and teaching the newbies how to do things safely.
Yep.
It is something that we have discussed at various board meetings in the past. But part of what it is, it comes down to volunteer manpower and the time to do it.
We've got somebody who's taking that role on, and that's going to be his main focus area for this year. We're hoping to make some progress on that this year.
If there's nothing else that we can touch on that we've forgotten you guys want to mention, Trisha, do you want to ask the last question?
Our last question we ask all our guests is, what Canadian we like to listen to on the 4x4 Canada podcast?
Someone I don't think you've talked to yet is there's a relatively new, few years old group out in Alberta called Trails for Tomorrow. They are a great association. We worked on some work with them. They have an interesting perspective, both because they were in a different province than us, and I guess you too, Wes, but they're a new organization, relatively new. So their development and growth over time is an interesting story.
That is another wonderful organization. Funny that you bring them up because I will be chatting with them tomorrow.
Oh, look at that. You already have read my mind, Dennis.
Bill and I have been going back and forth for, probably the last 6 months or so on this. And they've recently gone through some changes on the board and they've made a shift in the direction. And it's a wonderful organization. And it's going to be a really interesting conversation on some of the changes that have come up over the last 2-3 months. And so that'll be another great interview to listen to. Trails for Tomorrow, based out of Alberta, as you mentioned. And that is the organization that is trying to working on keeping the trails open in Alberta, which is a very big deal in Alberta right now. There's a lot of trails getting shut down. They basically want to shut down the whole east side of the Rockies, for lack of better, to look at the whole big picture kind of idea. Trails for Tomorrow is a very important organization, as is the OF4WD and the Full Drive Association of BC. If there's people out there that know of other organizations that are working hard to keep our trails open, whether it be on the East Coast or Manitoba or up north, let us know. We would love to put other organizations like the OF4WD and just hear what's going on around the country and how we can all help to keep these trails open.
Mm-hmm.
If you find anyone in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, let us know because we're still looking for them.
There is the Quebec Association as well. I know you've spoken to them. That
No, I haven't.
Yeah, we can pass along some contacts for that if you'd like.
Definitely, for sure. Because, it's something that is very true to me. I've been involved in these style associations for years, and it's something that's very dear and true to my heart. So the more that I can talk to organizations like yourselves and we can help get the word out and go from there. How about you, Chris? Have you got somebody that you would like to listen to on the 4x4 Canada podcast?
We'll see if we're going to wind up 0-2 on this. But two people that come to mind are Tim and Mike Rogers from TMR Customs. They're a longtime sponsor of ours. And I think they'd be interesting because they're also a great Canadian success story. When I first met these guys, they were making bumpers for TJs out of their parents' garage. And now they've grown to be recognized as one of the premier fabrication parts and racing part companies in North America. They've been down regularly at King and the Hammers to support their products. And as you may know, this year, the boys were actually down there racing one of their in-house design chassis and competing down there in it. I think that be an interesting chat with them.
Definitely. I did talk to Tim. I think he was like episode 3 or 4. So we're going back a year and a half now. I want to get Tim back on because not only was that a mind-blowing episode and what they do and their success story, like you said, mentioned, making bumpers in their garage up to a worldwide organization, but they have grown so much in the last year and a half. Just like you mentioned, their U-Build chassis, and they've gone down race the King of the Hammers, and they're one of my favorite companies in Canada. Just what they've done to a lot of Americans don't know they're a Canadian company, right? So it's quite interesting. So 100%, I want to get Tim back on the show with TMR Racing and talk about the King of Hammers and talk about all the new stuff they got happening. They're bringing out new stuff every month, so it's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Peter, who do you think should be on the Canada podcast?
I mentioned the Quebec Association. I think it'd be worth looking to them. But I don't know to what extent you want to pursue the Land Rover theme, but if you did, because it is a little bit of an unknown area in Canada, you might want to consider talking to Ottawa Valley Land Rovers. That is one of the oldest Land Rover clubs in North America. And they're an interesting bunch, but there's a lot of history. It's one of those vehicles there's a lot of history associated with it and characters. So that's a club you might be interested in speaking to if you wanted to explore that. I don't know to what extent Land Rovers are of interest to people.
I think they are, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Every Land Rover owner I know, as you mentioned, is a character, and they've all got their little differences between them. But I think they're a neat vehicle myself, and the fact that it's almost like a cult following with Land Rovers in Canada, from what I've seen anyways. But yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. The Ottawa Valley Land Rovers. Great suggestion for sure. And everybody had great suggestions tonight. And Brad, I just thought it was funny that I'm interviewing the Trails for Tomorrow.
Okay, you took mine. So do I get one more?
Go for it.
All right, I'm gonna do your second one, Peter. It's Joshua Dean.
Yep.
Joshua Dean is on the board of directors for the VMUTs, the Voyager Multi-Use Trail System up in Mattawa. He's connected. He's on the OF4WD board, and he's on the VMUTs board. So he's a busy guy, and he's made great connections and inroads for us up in that area, up in Mattawa.
I wheeled with Josh.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah. One time we headed up to that area and we reached out to them, and he's, we'll take you girls out to make it a day. There was like 10 of us, went winter wheeling. That was my first winter wheeling experience. And we went with Josh. So he's pretty cool. He's a pretty cool guy.
There's been a bit more investment and focus in that area, I think, over the last few years as well. And it's been going for quite a long time, that VMUT system. And we originally got involved with it back in 2005. But then a bit of resurgence on it. And so definitely recommend it because they're actually trying to put in their got a trail system and they're promoting it. So it's unusual that you get regions that are looking to do that. And so putting support for VMUTs, I think, is really important.
Definitely a great suggestion. And I'll rely on you, Brad, to give me some information with Josh. And definitely want to hook up with him for sure. Once again, we're talking with Peter, Chris, and Brad from the Ontario Federation of Four-Wheel Drive Recreationists. OF4WD is a better way to word it. And you can reach them out on their website as well as OF4WD on all the socials. Lots of information on the Facebook, but I know they're on some of the other socials as well, and tons of information on their website. So once again, guys, thanks for taking the time tonight to join us, and so we can learn more about your interesting organization.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
I
for
appreciate
having
the
us.
opportunity.
Thanks for having us.
That's great. And good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.